support, but they just can't speak. Is there any such group?
No. There's no any group like that. Because the other one, intelligence becomes
That's the reason why they are arming Al Qaeda.
Now they're now arming the Al Qaeda in Mali to attack Niger because they tried using a rebel leader, but it looks like his numbers did not add up. Not what it
And
read.
they will never add up there. In fact, the numbers should just keep dwindling wherever they are.
The numbers did not
We
add up.
don't need any war.
Yeah. So that is why they had to go for Al Qaeda. Can you imagine? When they talk of terrorism, I mean, we heard this lady talk about terrorism, so you need a global army. They use this terrorism.
Yeah. Of course. In fact,
just to show you how
the gangs
selfish.
and the groups and the terrorists are essentially their guys. For example, we knew when Trump actually came, forget about what they are saying about NATO. ISIS dissipated into nothing.
Yep.
Al Qaeda itself was not something that you could actually speak about. And you could mention several other different groups that they actually had. All of a sudden, because they stopped giving them money. And now, all of a sudden, those who feel like they should have these groups, like we are seeing the mushroom, ISIS is back again, Al Qaeda is powerful, and they left the Al Qaeda equipment as much as they could actually give them. And the same is true when it comes to South America. You essentially have different mercenaries that are actually popping up from Colombia that are trained, of course, by the same groups of people. And which is why people, particularly the leaders of nations, have to be very careful when you start hearing somebody saying, look, you don't have to actually defend yourself. I should actually defend you. And then they define the parameters for how the defense is supposed to be done.
We are praying, though.
Yes.
Yep.
We are praying, and we continue to do so. And we've also been praying for the people of Hawaii. You know those fires? Maui, that's it. In Maui, those fires, I've watched the footage over and over and over again. The evil hearts of these people just to achieve selfish goals. These are God's people, like you say, they are souls.
These are souls.
They are counted as souls. You understand? They're actually counted as souls in heaven. These are souls, and then you just destroy people like that. Now, fires are being started simultaneously worldwide. I did an episode of my show, Worldview, where fires were being started in the name of climate change, only to find out that there was nothing to do with climate change. They were actually arson fires.
Yeah.
And it was caught on camera. Can you imagine that?
Yes.
It was actually caught on camera, people starting the fire and running away. It was the same fire that broke out and became headlines to say climate change, there's a call for immediate and urgent action. And these were arson fires.
And the interesting thing is, it's not like a new thing. Remember, we're speaking about how war is something that they actually deploy when they want to get rid of a larger part of the population, or when they want to actually destabilize, particularly your financial system.
And force you into their narrative.
And force you into the narrative. The same thing happened, like he said. He gave a very good example. You had Germany that was actually progressing far above what most of the Western nations were actually doing. What did they do? They brought World War II to them, to their home turf. And now some of the companies are no more doing what they were supposed to be doing as stipulated back then. The same thing actually happened to the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union was making advances, going to the moon and the like, they decided, right, USSR should actually be dismantled. And now you are having something similar that they're actually using, which is essentially this so-called climate change. Remember, it started with an open declaration in July to say, the era of global warming, we thought we were on climate change. They dropped that term, particularly in the month of July, and they say the era of global warming is over. Now we're in the era of global boiling, and everywhere it was fires. And now we are getting to actually find out almost everywhere it's fires. And the fires are engineered, like you said. You can actually see footage, drone footage, satellite footage, and you can actually see, you know, with the technology of the day, you can actually see how the fires, they're equidistant in certain cases. That means they are started by something that is actually a tool. And then in some cases, you actually see that they start at the same time.
Wow.
So you have so many wildfires that are starting at the same time. That doesn't actually happen because it means the wind is not operating like wind.
You can say that
Yeah,
again.
of course. And then, interestingly, when you look at some of their findings, how can you have a fire that melts aluminium that needs 1,500 degrees
And doesn't
Celsius?
melt the trees.
And it doesn't melt, you know, the trees, but it melts
Which is
metal,
wood.
which is wood. You have wood and you have metal, metal that is requiring a higher degree of heat, and then you get to
The
find out
cars
that
were charged, the trees were standing. Somebody needs to, the science, we need to follow the science there.
Ah, no, there's no science.
We need to follow the science
There's no
there.
science here.
You know, so the places that have been hard hit by these fires are Canada, California, Texas, New York, Hawaii, and Italy. All of these fires started at once, just like you were saying. Realtors, investors, and straight land grabbers calling Maui Lahaina fire victims that lost their homes and offering cash for their land. There were actually realtors that came out. You saw them, right?
Yeah, don't let
That way.
crisis
The
go to
same thing we
waste.
saw with COVID-19 when
Sure.
we had the embalmers
yes,
who came out and said, listen, this is a hoax, this is a scam. The realtors are coming out that they had been offered monies, they had been coerced into selling certain land. They're all coming out and speaking. So this is exactly what we said would happen, right? Problem, reaction, solution.
yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, in July there was a conference to that effect. I can actually term it a Build Back Better conference, which is why the realtors are actually calling, because they had an inference of what would actually happen.
But the realtors they want it just for ownership. In other words, they're dispossessing people. We don't know what they want to do with the land. We don't think they're going to do anything constructive with the land, but they own it.
Well, but they,
And once you dispossess people,
in the conference, they were actually told, because remember, it was a smart city conference. And if you look again,
Okay.
That's it. It was
Okay.
a smart
Maui.
city
Okay.
conference,
Now I hear
and
you.
that's what they
Maui
wanted
is
Now I hear
actually
you.
on the website of the World Economic Forum. Do you know, is as the first island to actually become a smart city.
So how best to do that? Destroy the homes and say, okay, fine, we'll give you the solution, don't worry.
just
Smart
give me the
cities.
land first.
Smart cities go up. So in an article by the World Economic Forum from the 2018, actually, I think, the year 2018,
Yeah.
Hawaii allegedly voted to be the first AI-governed WEF smart city concentration camp. And suddenly, there's a climate change fire. And now, they need to rebuild due to the climate change disasters that they are trying to pawn off as natural. So a lot of those locals are forced to sell their land, and many tragically died in the flames. Do you know there were people that actually were burnt alive?
Sure.
And the mainstream media is not showing
People
you that.
on ground Hawaii are saying the numbers are grossly underreported.
Yeah.
People burnt, children burnt.
Yeah.
Some people ran to the beachfront, the water.
And lived in
and
the water
still-
for days.
But some still burnt there.
Wow.
The fire got to some. I remember there are some videos where some actually got burnt running away, you know, and then those survived we thank God for their lives. So engineered as the 15-minute smart city island, they've always wanted it. They've always wanted it. Now take a real close and listen to what Governor Josh Green of Hawaii had to say about the fire.
I'm already thinking about ways for the state to acquire that land so that we can put it into workforce housing, to put it back into families, or to make it open spaces in perpetuity as a memorial to people who were lost. We want this to be something that we remember after the pain passes as a magic place. And Lahaina will rebuild. The tragedy right now is the loss of life. The buildings can be rebuilt over time. Even the banyan tree may survive. But we don't want this to become a cleared space where then, yes, people from overseas just come and decide they're going to take it. The state will take
Instead
it.
of the 89 souls lost, only 2 have been identified, or that's of the recent.
So of the 89, so realize this, we when we find these, you know, our family and our friends, the remains we're finding is through a fire that melted metal. We have to do rapid DNA to identify them. Every one of these 89 are John and Jane Does. And so when you are asking us, and we know we've got to get, and I love the way our House representative, how she said it, she was so eloquent. We know we've got to go quick, but we've got to do it right. So when we pick up the remains and they fall apart, and so when you have 200 people running through the scene yesterday, and some of you, that's what you're stepping on. I don't know how much more you want me to describe it. That's what you're stepping on. Give us a little bit of time to contain that. Please. Because we've got to go make 89 notifications. And coming from a place that had to make 58, I understand the pain this is going to take. And we're not done with 89. So just understand what this thing is, because none of us really know the size of it yet. Everybody wants a number. You want it fast or you want it right? We're going to do it right.
No, in actual fact, let me even tell you. So the reason the authorities aren't letting the people of Laina back in to survey the damage, he speaks about surveying the damage and doing an investigation, is simply because it doesn't even look at all like wildfire damage.
It's not.
That's the first thing.
Yep.
It looks like a bomb or Jew went off.
Yes.
And if this is one of the rare cases where the National Guard was not summoned,
Yes. The response was not.
instead,
It was very slow.
is the FBI.
Interestingly also,
So there
the
was
alarm
a,
The
system didn't go.
FBI was the one
the-
on ground?
there was a video footage from a guy in Hawaii who was saying, why is it the FBI? You see the FBI, the guys with the FBI vest, written on it FBI. Why is it the FBI? When the fires went off in California, it was National Guard and the fire department.
Yeah.
Usually if it's fire, it's fire department, National Guard. Fire department, National Guard. New Orleans, what's the name again? What's this place in New Orleans? Katrina.
Okay.
It's the fire guard, fire department, National Guard, and sometimes the army with airlifting. National Guard were not
in Hawaii.
invited.
I think the people in Hawaii
I
were
think
so
it's-
neglected,
there are so many
guys.
things
Can we
to-
be honest? It's really sad.
There's so many
There's
things
a
to-
lot to uncover here. A lot to uncover.
And there's so many things that actually don't add up. For example, you have Hawaii, which is the best, most sophisticated hurricane warning system. It didn't go off. Then you have cases where the citizens actually tell you that they were told not to go in certain, because when you look at the island is actually one way. It was supposed to be very easy for them to actually evacuate. And there were people, police officers who were actually saying, under orders, we cannot allow you to pass through. And most of the people who actually survived are people who got out of their cars and started walking on foot. And then after they are done, remember the police chief that you actually saw was actually in the Las Vegas, scandal that actually happened. Him and his deputy. Suddenly, you have a town in Hawaii which has got a police chief that is not even actually Hawaii.
Thank you.
And then the way he actually conducts the whole thing, he conducts it like a crime scene. Obviously, it's a crime scene.
No, but it's climate change.
It's a
Climate change is not a crime scene. It's a natural
It's a-
cause.
yes.
So we need, what you
All
call
hands
them?
on
The
deck.
first
We need
Responders,
first responders to come, right?
Yes.
And start helping. That's what a natural disaster is
Yes.
all about.
And guess
But
what?
no, FBI has locked down.
No.
The fires
The
were
owners
also,
of the homes cannot
they were
even come to their
intelligent like
homes.
COVID.
Yeah.
They left all the poshy, plush areas that are owned by essentially people who have got money.
Of course.
Come on.
So now,
And it's quite interesting because wind doesn't work like that. It's not.
so yeah,
Come on.
you know what? The United Nations, and of course especially Secretary Antonio Guterres, they need to be held to account for the alarming and historical statement made to the effect that an era of global boiling has arrived. What nonsense is that? But have a listen to this.
I want to talk briefly about climate science because we've seen COVID science has been smashed. Earlier today I promised to talk tonight on why the climate change cult of doom and their rebranding to climate boiling is scientific nonsense. Let me do that now using my favourite thing, empirical scientific data. Referencing a peer-reviewed paper titled World Atmospheric Carbon Dioxide, CO2, its 14C specific activity, non-fossil component, anthropogenic fossil component, and emissions 1750 to 2018, published in Health Physics Journal in February 2022. It's a long title, but it saves phone calls from fact-checkers. This paper used cesium-14 to analyse carbon dioxide in the atmosphere across the period 1750 to 2018. After 1750 and the onset of the Industrial Revolution, the anthropogenic hydrocarbon component and the non-hydrocarbon component in the total atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration began to increase. Despite the lack of knowledge of these two components, claims that all or most of the increase in carbon dioxide since 1800 has been due to the anthropogenic hydrocarbon component have continued since they began in 1960, with Keeling curve increase in CO2 from burning fossil fuel. The specific activity of 14C in the atmosphere gets reduced by a dilution effect when hydrocarbon carbon dioxide, which is devoid of 14C, enters the atmosphere. We have used the results of this effect to quantify the two components. The results negate claims that the increase in carbon dioxide since 1800 has been dominated by the increase in the anthropogenic hydrocarbon component. We determined that in 2018, atmospheric anthropogenic hydrocarbon CO2 represented 23% of the total carbon dioxide produced since 1750, with the remaining 77% in the exchange reservoirs. Our results show that the percentage of the total carbon dioxide due to the use of hydrocarbon fuels from 1750 to 2018 increased from 0% in 1750 to 12% in 2018. Much too low to be the cause of any claimed global warming. The fundamental basis of the theory of anthropogenic global warming has been found by analysis of atmospheric gases to be completely wrong. Nature, as I've said many times, controls carbon.
The era of global boiling. So they give names fully knowing what their agenda of that time is.
Of course.
This is the time for fires.
Yes.
And
it's a coded message, actually. When they were saying the era of global boiling, they were actually telling particularly the actors and the agents to actually go with the so-called...
Switch on the lights.
Yeah, of course. And when you look at it, it's not something that is actually new. Remember, in Rome, Emperor Nero, what did he do? Okay, how about Crassus, who actually ran his own private fire department? He was the one setting fire to people's homes at the same time. When the fire's there, you would actually bring his own private fire department to actually come and douse down the fires. And that's essentially what they're actually going for. I was just thinking of what Professor actually said. When the green horse starts galloping, what will happen to the nations when it comes to hunger, when it comes to starvation, when it comes to food and inflation? And that's essentially what they're actually indicating. When you hear the era of global boiling, it's a coded message to actually tell you that we're about to make sure that the food or food inflation actually goes up, because inflation...
and the grain is burning up also. Did you see that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're burning up the grain in Paris. Yes.
A large grain reservoir.
Just burnt. Grain is burning. Food is burning. Meat markets are you begin to ask yourself that. What kind of an evil heart?
How about water? Because we go to see people from Maui, they dash into water. Water is not supposed to actually behave like how it behaved in Maui.
That is why I don't understand how you said people died in water.
Yes, they rushed to
Did
their
it boil?
plots.
But if they said the word fire melted, we heard him there say
It
the
melted
fire
still.
melted steel. That is an inferno.
Yep.
That's a furnace.
Yeah, but then
boiling.
the trees were standing.
But
it's
the trees
really
were
not an
standing.
inferno. I don't know what to call it.
But how did?
It's something.
Yeah, that is.
It really is something
furnace.
orchestrated.
For it
because
to
you
boil
begin to ask.
steel.
Now
that's not
imagine-
wildfire.
No, and then wildfires can somehow, at least you can put them off somehow. These fires died down on their own as a result of them burning out. You know when a fire burns out because it has exhausted all the chemicals maybe that are here, and then it burns out on its own. That's what we saw there. It burnt out.
Sure. Because it was by design. It was supposed to actually eviscerate all that is actually there. And when you look at it, remember, Maui is actually a smart city conference that is actually supposed to happen, I think in September, if not October.
This is their chance to come in now.
And if you understand what they've actually been pushing, the Agenda 2030 Accelerated from their document, remember it started, we were talking about how your Googles, your Safaris, your Chromes, your Firefox, they've actually come with censorship deployments. It started from the document. Remember, he started with misinformation, and disinformation when you are speaking about how they are actually deciding on a common future. And now we're getting to actually
And those
find out-
words sounds pretty cool.
Of course. Now you have the common future when it comes to climate change. Remember, anywhere where they don't have their leeway, because when you look at where all the fires have actually gone, including in Greece, where we actually saw some fires recently in the month of July, in Italy, these are places where they had prime land, which was contested, including Maui, because Maui, most of the residents were refusing to sell. They were refusing to sell particularly to, guess who? BlackRock and Vanguard. And all of a sudden, they have fires that obviously you can tell they were started by direct energy weapons.
Can one man honestly own the land in